Before Doomwatch came along, terrified science fiction characters weren't unusual. But as viewers, we never got too scared, because we knew it couldn't possibly happen to us.
At least half the stories that we were doing came true.
So the papers would say, this is Doomwatch. Doomwatch predicted this.
And I don't think anybody was aware of the effect it would have. None of it.
It's a slightly paranoid series and a very dark-edged series, but it had amazing public impact at the time.
At the start of the 1970s, 3 series of Doomwatch left up to 13 million BBC One viewers open-mouthed by taking genuine scientific advances and showing us what might happen if they went horribly wrong.
It was science, but it related absolutely to us, to everybody. It wasn't just to people who were scientifically minded.
It has all the strengths of good, scary, suspenseful TV, but in between, it just hit you with fact after fact after fact.
But there's a slightly sort of apocalyptic quality to Doomwatch. It's what happens when technology goes wrong.
What made Doomwatch different was that its apocalyptic stories came true, scaring the press and public witless. And choosing the stories for the Doomwatch team to investigate was a real scientist with a nightmare vision of the future.
I think the public now is inaccurately and incompletely informed. Now, there's nothing wrong, it seems to me, with the proper presentation of data in an attractive way to the public repeatedly, providing the data is accurate.
Doomwatch would not have existed or without Kit. Kit was the extraordinary brain behind it.
Dr. Kit Pedler was the co-creator of Doomwatch. He was an all-round scientist and one of the nation's first high-profile environmental campaigners. Kit had the knowledge to make his vision of the future convincing. And from the very first episode, The Plastic Eaters, his cautionary tales opened eyes to some very real dangers.
The idea of a virus that can consume plastic as a way of getting rid of the problem of landfill. What happens if the virus gets out when everything in our lives is made of plastic?
It took, as far as I remember, it took place on an airliner, and all the plastic began to melt in the airplane. You see, so everybody assumed this was going to be real science fiction stuff. But halfway through the program, whenever it was, you came to this lot in London called Doomwatch.
The Doomwatch department was a small team of crack government scientists, tasked with overcoming some pretty sticky situations, armed with little more than sound reasoning.
So if the bug is transferred from place to place,
it would be exposed to fresh plastic, fresh food.
From then on, it branched out into all the areas that Kit and Jerry and other people wanted us to be writing about.
Kit, Jerry and the others formed the ideas machine behind Doomwatch. Jerry Davis, Doctor Who's script editor, had met Dr. Pedler when Kit was brought in as unofficial science advisor on the Time Lord story. And the two of them combined to create the iconic Cybermen. Producer Terence Dudley joined them to provide the production know-how to realise Kit and Jerry's new idea.
Kit was a soothsayer par excellence. I mean, he was a genius. His was the vision. He saw the whole environmental thing coming and managed to make it dramatic.
do you mind?
No, go ahead.
It may have been a good time for taxidermists, but the general public in 60s Britain had started to worry about man's environmental impact after the mood-altering effects of oil spills, population explosion and nuclear proliferation. When Doomwatch came to our screens in 1970, the government had set up a Department of the Environment, and many of today's green pressure groups were taking their first steps.
The best way of doing it is to go on showing the public that we are using up our planet. In a way, if you can put it this way, we're living on a leasehold planet, and we don't ever pay the ground rent. To show them that their way of life is using up our resources, I believe, in the end, they would take action. They would demand changes.
My own thing from the 60s was going on marches against the bomb. And I think that the audience was probably becoming very much aware of potential environmental issues, nothing like they are today, obviously, But it was absolutely of the moment. And I think the audience took to the characters.
I've got something.
Well, don't give it to me.
It's not much.
Let me be the judge of the paucity of the information.
The Doomwatch team was headed up by Dr. Spencer Quist, a Nobel Prize-winning mathematician played by the late John Paul.
The ministry.
And got themselves disinfested?
Presumably.
For 18 months?
Aye.
It happens. These little beasts...
And bright young scientist Toby Wren would make the perfect prodigy.
I came here for an interview for a job.
Yes, you're a physical chemist, first-class honours Cambridge, single, and I'm told you're keen to join us.
Yes.
Well, you have. Here's your first...
He was a very intense young man. He took himself very seriously. And I think that's why the public took to him.
People who were seeing the rushes kept coming back and saying, "You've got a star there. That boy's going to be an absolute star."
Cigarette?
Oh, no, thank you.
Everyone, especially the women, just went mad for Robert Powell.
I was skinny, odd-looking. You know, as one critic said, I had a face like a haunted parking meter.
He was so sexy and so beautiful, absolutely. And he really did. I mean, that really sort of set Robert Powell up.
To suddenly have girls jumping on you from all sides, you think, why me? Then you take advantage of it. But that's neither here nor there.
Hi, I'm Wren.
Yes, I heard. She would have introduced us, but I pinched her bum just before lunch.
Dr. John Ridge was perhaps a more obvious hunk. Actor Simon Oates was also a bit of a real-life James Bond, having been trained in espionage in the Army Intelligence Corps. Producer Terence Dudley also incorporated the comic timing Oates had honed in stand-up into the role, not to mention the actor's eye for the ladies.
I like ladies, and I put myself about a bit, you know, and why not? So he let me play with that in a series. He would put us, me and whoever the lady was, together, and we get on with it.
Be assured that my interest is entirely dishonourable.
It was easy to do because I was playing me.
Ridge's humour and womanising provided some welcome light relief in the laboratory gloom, as did his unusual taste in clothes.
Some of the things that I wore, I know are outrageous, but then I enjoyed it. It was fun, and it didn't detract from the character.
But you'll have to get a haircut one day.
I
You're too ambitious to play Peter Pan forever.
If you think I'm going to put on a pinstripe suit and stand up in front of a group of eminent American technologists to trot out the gospel according to my masters in Whitehall, if you
You're
think
the one
that's
who must do the thinking, Ridge.
One of the directors, he said, I bet you 50 quid you would wear a dog collar through this series, this episode. I said, all right. So what I came on to do, I got a dog collar. He says, cut. You can't. I said, 50 quid, please.
It was a very early 1970s TV leading man. I mean, it certainly seemed to go with the open shirts and the medallion man, and sort of the idea that you can be a scientist but also a playboy.
Well, I've got a job right up your alley. You chat up a Mary Brown.
I do?
Bradley will clue you up on her.
And who is Miss Bryant?
Dr. Bryant is a biologist.
The Doomwatch team could have their outside interests, but in the face of reports of carnivorous killer rats, there was serious work to be done.
Toby, your homework's a little less demanding. I want you to find a rat with a preference for flesh.
Kit Pedler had wondered what would happen if genetically modified, hyper-intelligent rats escaped their laboratories. And in Doomwatch's best-remembered episode, Colin Bradley, played by Joby Blanchard, joins Toby Wren to catch one.
Nobody likes rats, and it's a terror by vermin story, and there's a whole run of those. There was Willard at the time, and that James Herbert crappy paperback, and there was an ITV play by Nigel Neal about rats eating people as well. So obviously it was an early 70s thing, but the Doomwatch version of it, partly because it sort of goes between rather high-flown talk about work in laboratories and just people living in really grotty houses being eaten by rats, that it had a real sort of social buzz to it.
I think they sewed rats to my trousers. I mean, play rats, stuffed rats. We didn't have Velcro then. And I just danced around going, ooh, I've got rats on my legs. was all it was. Can you imagine now if you tried to do that? Oh.
The super smart man-eating rats that escape Wren's clutches go on to run amok amongst the public. In what might be interpreted as the first signs of a takeover bid in the Doomwatch production office, producer Terence Dudley deemed that the best people to play the public would be producer Terence Dudley, producer's son Stephen Dudley, and producer's wife Mrs. Dudley. Meanwhile, some of the rats returned to the lab to seek out their creator.
When I went in at the end of it, if you remember the end where she's on the floor and being gnawed by the rats, and I wasn't acting then. I was so much, I just went down. And I stayed there, and people had to take me out and take me to the dressing room. I was so moved and by the whole bloody, powerful stuff.
Within a few days of the broadcast, there were reports of dangerous super rats on the loose in Shropshire. As the press and public were agog at Doomwatch's prophetic power, politicians were stirred to ask questions in Parliament. Doomwatch's knack for prediction and persuasive storylines made the government twitchy. And when the production team started sniffing around the issue of lead in petrol, there was a swift reaction.
We were putting a case that you should have something called unleaded petrol. Now, this met huge resistance from the oil companies who said we were talking totally off the top of our heads and you could never have unleaded petrol because the two went together like hand in glove. And of course, they then got the backing of the government, who in turn tried to warn us away from this issue.
You've got fumes in the air, you can see them as a haze. You've got lead in those fumes, you've got carbon monoxide. These things, I think, have made this whole area of London absolutely intolerable for human habitation.
I think there was a different relationship between the BBC and the government of the day, and I think that the BBC took its responsibilities quite seriously. It would therefore not have been deflected by the fact that Under-Secretaries of State were trying to interfere with the making of a programme. In fact, it probably would have indicated that they must have been on the right track.
A spokesman said it was prepared to anticipate government legislation by announcing a 25% reduction in the British Standard's maximum lead level in petrol, but that the consumer must be prepared to pay upwards of twopence more per gallon.
It's quite good in retrospect to look back and think, well, maybe we did our little bit then in establishing unleaded petrol, not only in the UK, but probably around the world.
Why contact me?
Because I don't believe that we're being properly informed.
Yes, well, what...
And fiction could mirror fact. On screen, the Doomwatch team's investigations were also treated with suspicion by government. I didn't get where I am today without knowing a bureaucrat when I see one.
Information on every new project.
You are fully informed, and I take the word frank very unkindly.
What about the Beeston Laboratories? You've never been allowed in there.
I don't think there's anything going on there, Quist, that need concern you. Good evening to you.
John Barron in Doomwatch would come in as this sort of smarmy, old-school tie cover-up bloke who would give the hero a hard time.
Dr. Quist, I'm afraid I intend to set up a most exhaustive inquiry into the activities of your department, and until the results are known, I must tell you that I have decided that as director, you are suspended.
Our heroes spend half their time struggling against the wrong-uns, against the villains, and the other half dealing with the form-filling and the bureaucracy and the sort of smug civil servants. I mean, nobody liked civil servants in the 70s.
Why don't you look at yourself, Mr. Mitchell? Because I'm going to make sure that everybody sees you for what you are.
Doomwatch took on not only the government, but also big business. Yet surely there was a limit to the number of provocative and prophetic storylines the Doomwatch team could come up with.
Shipton had the...
Stop being a bloody fool! Shut up!
The ideas, nobody was ever short of ideas for Doomwatch. You'd only got to open any paper, really, and see, oh, this is something.
Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis weren't the modern equivalent of Nostradamus. They scoured newspapers and magazines for scientific snippets, took them to a terrible extreme, put them on TV, and provoked headline after headline. Clever, but the real trick was in knowing which stories to go for and how to give them impact.
The one I remember quite vividly was the absorption of hormones from fish farming. So that all these guys who were involved with fish farming were all growing breasts and becoming No, they were having a tough time.
And usually what they would do is have sort of half an hour of editorial saying, here's this problem that's happening with noise pollution or genetic engineering or atomic energy. And then it boils down to a suspense situation, to people who are put in actual danger by the errors of science.
Kit and Jerry's brand of dramatised apocalyptic crystal ball gazing chimed with over 10 million viewers, garnered countless newspaper headlines and prompted thousands of letters of praise. But others wrote to question the programme's seemingly unenlightened portrayal of women.
Now, we'll just take your sweat and pulse rate.
Is that all?
And register your brain waves, if we can find any.
The girls in it, they're all a bit of airheads, aren't they? I mean, they're just floating around, so... I would defend them anyway. But no, I never got that impression. I thought they were charming girls, and they did exactly what they had to do and what they were told to do. And if they came over as a bit fluffy, then they came over as a bit fluffy.
What?
Bit of light relief as far as I was concerned.
You have to bear in mind, it was the 60s. And in the 60s, whether one likes it or not, these departments in government were male-dominated. So all we were doing was reflecting the time.
This list has something in common. What is it?
Oh, they're all,
Vulnerable?
Yes, that's it.
Right, girl.
The thing that really places Doomwatch in its time is the character that Simon Oates plays, John Ridge.
I think he's a great actor and it's an interesting character. But the series wears its right on its sleeve so much that when he comes in with his sort of crude sexual come-ons, I think it does slightly embarrass the series and dates it.
Throw him about then.
Last one. Free offers. Can never resist a free offer.
Oh, really? I should have made one last night then.
It's the attitude, it's the way he talks to women. You think, I'm sorry, you're a Neanderthal, get out of here. Yeah, I'm not accepting you as the arbiter of morality.
Doomwatch, so alive to our changing environment, looked like it was ignoring other changes in society. Could it have passed them by that women were out, about and protesting rather than making tea? Producer Terry Dudley defended Doomwatch in the Radio Times and then announced the recruitment of an attractive woman scientist to adjust the balance.
I'd always been, from the very beginning, I'd been hooked with Doomwatch. And then I wrote to Terry Dudley, just saying, hi, have you got anything? And I remember, I'm sure he did, he wrote back immediately and just said, would you like to do Doomwatch? Would you like to play this character in Doomwatch?
Dr. Chantry.
And in I came as biologist, Dr. Faye Chantry.
You asked me to join Doomwatch. Well, I'm beginning to think I should have, only to stop the rot.
So, yes, incredible.
Yes, I think it was a conscious decision to bring in a strong lady because it was good for the team. We had secretaries and stuff and airheads floating around, but when she came in with a positive attitude and stood up for herself, as far as we were concerned, it wasn't a matter of gosh, look, there's a bird coming. There was this person that's come into the team, and she knows what she wants. She's got a mind of her own, and she'll let you know about it. And so I think it was a very, very good decision. Very good decision.
She's got all the right qualities. She's got the conscience and the dedication, and she's a strong woman.
I'd forgotten how beautiful chromosomes were. Dance of life?
Or is it of destiny?
Very nice, I think, in 1970 to have that feminism.
Do stop fiddling.
Sorry, it's compulsive.
Terry Dudley had brought the show back in line with 1970s Britain. Television itself had been changing, and BBC One's new colour credentials meant Doomwatch had full realistic impact. And whilst Kit and Jerry's stories were anticipating the future, the production of the series now looks old-fashioned, with lots of lengthy, dialogue-heavy scenes for the actors to remember. Or not.
They're free to stay as long as they like and go where they want.
You know it's not as simple as that.
No, they're free men, Dr. Quist.
Back then, there was a sense that television was a form of theatre, rather than, as now, a form of film. And you have to get past that in order to appreciate it. Because I grew up with that, I still find it quite easy to click my mind back into that set and say, oh, yeah, maybe he stumbled over his lines a bit there, but actually people in real life talk like that.
Subject to final ministry approval?
And people were expected to come along and do a sustained scene that might run 10 minutes or whatever.
In those days, that's how long scenes were.
And while you're at it, call the Export Advisory Service and check Mr. Ridge.
Yes, sir. Because you expected your audience to have that attention span, you know.
And we were also working in an era when it was very expensive to go back and reshoot a scene.
You do not, hesitate or make a mess of the scene. If you can possibly help it, you treat it as though it's live.
Your determination over this, your whole obsession with this drug.
Mind you, I didn't know that. And I remember, on more than one occasion, just saying stop.
Dear sir, please could you let us have some of your new pesticide?
And looking straight down the barrel of the lens and hearing,
It's a clean sweep. Apart from the odd earthworm, there's very little left alive.
Out on location, there was more time to get Doomwatch's clever dramatisations and prophetic storylines absolutely right, and the show's biggest ever audience was for an episode called Invasion, mostly filmed out of the studio. 13.6 million people tuned in to find out what would happen to an ordinary village if a deadly germ was to leak out.
I did say to Terence, this is a bit of a tall order, actually. We've got to evacuate the whole village. And Terry said, oh, that's simple. He said, I know exactly where you can do it. You'd go up to Grassington in Yorkshire, the Dales.
I got the idea from it because Kit and Jerry said to me, maybe we could do something on the anthrax scare.
It was, of course, developed only for defensive purposes.
What's defensive about a bug that can wipe out a city the size of London in 6 weeks?
And we actually got the cooperation of the army to come in, and we had to evacuate the square. And of course, by the next morning, they came hurtling in on these tanks and military vehicles, and practically demolished a chemist shop on the way down the hill. And what nobody had thought of was that when they all came into this marvellous cobbled square and swung round to a halt, so the cobbles started to come up. So altogether, it was only by dint of us all being terribly nice and understanding people that we didn't actually end up total odds with the village of Grassington.
And it had a very moving and very sinister ending to it.
And what happens to those that you push out to make room for your disease? Dr. Quist.
Yes?
Will we ever come back?
And the expression on John Paul's face, Quist, I can't do it, not an actor, but the implication was, no, you're never going to come back. You think you are, but you never are. And that was the strength of it. Everybody watching that episode, this could happen to us.
That could this happen to us aspect of the show helped to make Doomwatch a huge success. And with no shortage of what-if science stories available to the writers, the Doomwatch team would go on saving the day week after week, surely.
The Beeb, amazingly, didn't make me sign an option for another series. So halfway through the making of Doomwatch, after about 6 episodes, when it was actually on air, Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis came and said, well, obviously, now it's a hit, you'll stay. And I said, no, the bigger the hit, the more I want to go.
90 seconds.
Don't have a family, I don't have a wife. Why would I want to get lumbered with one show? And they said, you absolutely sure? And I said, well, how do you want to go? Irrevocably. I'll go in bits. Blow me up. And that's what they did. The Radio Times, in fact, and I know this as it is a fact, got more letters about that than any other subject since the war. I mean, it's classic, isn't it? When you have a hero defusing a bomb, heroes don't blow themselves up. They survive. They don't. So they were in shock.
Non-nuclear.
Great. Who'll tell Toby?
When will you people learn not to interfere?
It was one of the first shows I can remember that did that thing of killing off the most popular character in a shock and surprise way, which is one of those things it's always a good idea to do because you get a lot of buzz from it. And then people sort of worry that the show's never quite the same afterwards.
Great loss to me, to us, to the series. And as that series went on, the ideas were harder to find, I think, for the writers. And whether there was some tension of who's really in charge of this show, the writers or the producer, I don't know. But it got to a point where I thought, well, I think enough's enough.
Tensions had indeed been building in the production office, and it was very much about who was in charge. Producer Terence Dudley had been instrumental in giving Doomwatch its dramatic power, and having written, directed and even acted on the series, he had his own clear idea about where it should be heading.
Terence Dudley was a delightful character, a big, burly man, big guy, very genial, very erudite, very witty, very entertaining person. But my God, he wanted everything done his way. The door of Terence Dudley's office was always just open, and Terry was sitting there waiting for me to come. And as soon as he saw me in the corridor, he grabbed me, come in. And he made me sit down, and for 45 minutes, he totally rubbished Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, and it was awful then what these two were up to, etc. And I had to take all this. And then, as I came out of his office, 3/4 of an hour later, Jerry's office was bang next door. And Jerry had got his door open, and he listened to all this and pulled me in and said, "Now, what's that bastard been telling you about me?" And it was perfectly obvious that this could not go on. And because of their relationship with Terence Dudley, it wasn't surprising that Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis resigned.
I think probably Terence wanted to take it into a slightly more melodramatic area, and Kit wanted to keep it scientific. That's what we, and bless his heart, no, I mean, he had my backing on that.
Doomwatch came to an end in 1972 after 3 groundbreaking series. The title of the show entered the dictionary, and the government even considered setting up a real Doomwatch-style unit. And despite the fact that the BBC wiped some of the original episodes, those that survived were repeated in the 1990s. More recently still, Channel 5 asked a writer to come up with plot ideas for a revival.
And he went to his new scientists and he looked at, and he went in with his pitches for what the story was going to be about. And he said, and here's this cutting edge thing that's going to happen, we could do this story. And every single thing he said they'd done on the original show.
Kit Pedler, Jerry Davis and Terence Dudley had all contributed mightily to the prophetic, dark-edged and deeply influential Doomwatch.
Doomwatch I owe the rest of my career to, and I don't mind saying that.
Kit Pedler continued to lecture on the environment until his death in 1981, by which time the issues he'd helped to bring to the public's attention were becoming mainstream social and political concerns.
You couldn't have done something like that and not be touched by it. And I was touched by it, yeah.
Kit Pedler, you are greatly missed.